All right, so I'm feeling kind of grumpy today, and everything's just being hella annoying. I don't even know where to start. um, I guess last night I don't know what was going on with Ziva, but like every time she just didn't want to like settle down and go to bed, and I don't know if it was because my mom was in the kitchen and that's her favorite room in the house because things get dropped on the floor and she gets extra snacks and all that fun stuff. It was like I barely turned the light out and she was sitting there whining at me. And then we went out there, we tried it again, and there was nothing that she wanted. So it's like, I don't know what's going on with this dog. But then when I woke up around 3:30, she was still in the mood to go out there and see what was going on, which that was around the time my mom was actually getting ready to go to bed, I guess. So I don't know. It was aggravating because I had to get up early this morning to come deal with the hound and the doodle. So I skipped the early morning stop over here because I was going to be here. I wanted to be here by 8 anyway. And, well, it ended up being more like 8:30. The buyer for the house apparently has a buyer for their house, so they had, today they were having it assessed, appraised, whatever. I had somebody to come check everything out, and so I had to have these two out of the house for 3 hours. And they've been around Ziva and Gidget and Pepper. Taz, they have not. And the big holdup on that has been I don't think there's anybody that could help me introduce them that would have any kind of decent sense on what's going on body language wise and all that fun stuff with the dogs. So it would be all on me to figure everything out. And while I feel like I could handle that, I didn't have all the tools I needed to really make it work. So, like if I had been able to chain the doodle up to a tree in the yard and the hound as well, so they weren't at the door when I was trying to get mine out the door, which again, Taz is the only one that is kind of sketchy about, and I had him on a leash. As soon as I opened the door and these two saw the others, the doodle starts attacking the door. So it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. So we gave up on that idea. And then it was just annoying because if I went in the house, then the hound is out there howling at me because I left her outside. And when I went back outside, Taz was bellowing because, there was other dogs in his yard and he can't get out there and can't get to me or whatever. So it's like, it was just a whole ass ordeal. So yeah, we ended up just, okay, to start with, when I got them out of the house, it was about 10 till 9, and the first thing we did was run down to Hardee's for breakfast, because I figured it was an easy way to kill time. And then we went over to the school and walked around their retention pond a couple laps. Yeah, it was fine. And then we had to take the scenic route back to the house, and I left these guys in the car with their car running and the AC on, because it's 90s outside. That's the bigger problem, is it's really freaking hot to try to do anything as well. So I left them in the car with it running, went in the house. I went through to the yard and went ahead and played with Gidget and Taz, try to burn a little energy off of them as well. These guys got a little bit of a walk-in, so I was hoping that would make them all easier to get along with. Then it didn't work out. And it was just a pain in the ass. And what I eventually did was just sit on the back porch swing and deal with the obnoxious bellowing from either the hound or the healer, which he eventually settled down, because he was trying to figure out what I was doing, and since he couldn't see me, he, gave up and went into the living room. But yeah, anytime I was trying to go into the door, it's always an ordeal. And there's the nice and casual pose now. But yeah, since it's freaking hot outside, right? So it's like already 90s this morning, and heat advisory all week. Our yard is fine on that end because there's like 6 gigantic trees, so it's really well shaded. And I had the fan on the porch. There's a ceiling fan out there, so that was on and minimally helpful. But they're still panting all over the place, and it's freaking hot. And add in the drama of the stress for at least the doodle, because she's not often over there. Tried to help them socialize her when she was a puppy, and she was around Gidget and Ziva a lot, but then of course never Taz. So I don't know. It's just, at some point, I think it was about the time they moved over here, she stopped really getting socialized with anybody, because when they were at the old house, they had a fenced yard, so I could bring mine over, and I walked Taz around the outside of their fence with everybody else in the fence before, and that was fine. But still, now there's no fence. So now they have 4 cinder blocks on the back porch with those chains tied on them, and they get out on the chain and then they come back in, and that's as exciting as it is. They were holding out for the fence because they wanted to get a 6-foot fence, but that was not approved by the HOA. And so they held off on it for a long time, and then there was finally a neighborhood meeting for people to vote on the fence situation. And apparently there were more renters there than actual homeowners, and it wasn't an important enough issue, so it didn't end up getting pushed through. So that was kind of, I think, the end point on even whether they were going to stay here or not, since they can't have a fence as big as tall as they wanted, because India's freaking, she's a horse, so she could practically walk over the fence. It's a 4-foot fence anyway, which I'm still of the mind of it'd be better than nothing. You just wouldn't be able to leave her out there all the time. But since it was either the 6-foot or nothing, because they didn't figure there was any point in it, so whatever. Anyway, sealed the deal on them not sticking around. No big deal. Again, with the family stuff, kind of needs to happen that they move and go, have the opportunity to go somewhere else to try to raise their daughter as they would like to, without my mother meddling in the middle of it. And my father just being an asshole over the top of it, because that's what he does. And even worse after the strokes. But my mom keeps wanting to say that this is not the man she married. It's like, I think it's more so than you realize it is, because I feel like basically with that whole family, when my brother and I came around, of course, we were the only grandkids for, 12 to 15 years, right? So he was born, and then 2.5 years later, there was me, and then the next cousin she came 12 years after me, and so he was 15. And then after that, it's like they were four really close, like the middle sister's daughter was born when I was 12. The next, which was the youngest sister's daughter, was born when I was 13. And then the boys were both the following. Okay, one was born in August, the last was born in April, but within a year of each other, but not in the same year. So still, I guess technically 4 years spread out. But yeah. What I feel like happened was, since my brother and I were there for an extended time with just the two of us, and I've talked about the issues with my grandfather and my mother on the narcissism and essentially the abuse that we were raised in, that, it was extremely toxic, and we were raised to think that it was normal. And only through this talk therapy YouTube thing that I've been doing have I processed through the parts where it's, oh, this is very much not normal or useful, but it is what it is, so that's what basically ended up happening. Was they were literally just sucking the life out of us, right? So my mom wants to say my dad is not the same person she married, but I think that has more to do with the fact that my brother and I started setting boundaries and are not just open to allowing everybody to to pull on our life force anymore. Like, we actually are not just going along with whatever bullshit they're trying to put out there. So now that we have boundaries, it's just allowing their shitty behavior to be amplified, because now we're not essentially muffling it for them, right? So they were always kind of shitty. They just were able to suck the life out of us so that they were able to think they were offering more to the world than they actually were, right? So, like, the biggest thing I can think of, like, I watched something the other day, I think it was probably Monte Mader's page on Instagram. She said something about, it was either her or that Berecker. One of them mentioned the part in the scripture, because of course they talk a lot about people that want to cherry pick for their own purposes, but then outright ignore all the things that stand in opposition of what they want to believe. So, just pick the stuff that works for your point and then ignore all the rest. One of them, I think it's probably Berecker, mentioned the passage that talks about fathers shouldn't, provoke your children? And I remember reading that in high school, and it's like, that was like the sole thing my dad has ever done in my life, right? After my great-grandfather died, he was not entirely a shitty human until my great-grandfather died, and then all hell broke loose in the family, because then, of course, my grandparents moved up here, and, of course, my great-grandfather that everybody loved, and we were going out to their farm every weekend, practically. He died, and then my great-grandma ended up moving up here, and we still went over there a lot. But it was like the stuff that we had done, because we used to spend a lot of time out on the farm and, going and exploring the property and stuff. And then, of course, when he was gone, that was no more. So once my grandparents moved up here, it's like everybody turned on the bad behavior because, it became solely about enabling my grandfather's bullshit. And, he was all about keeping his illusion alive. So it's like, yeah, that was the big change, right? So when I was 7, my great grandfather died, and then 7 to 8, all this shitty stuff started happening. Of course, I started getting bullied, and it was largely, yes, it was at school, but also by my parents, right? So I remember coming across that verse at some point in high school when we started going back to church, and just getting really irritated at the fact that was pretty much the connection I had with my father. Was everything he did was strictly to provoke me, and that's like, even now, that's still what he does. But now that I have boundaries and he doesn't just get access to my energy anytime he wants, he has to actually face that his shitty behavior has nowhere to go. So now it's like it's amplified in the house because, he and my mom just they're both putting out the negative energy, and I'm not there to buffer it out anymore. So now they're just, I'm there, but they can't access my energy, so they're not sucking me into it. That's something that's been kind of frustrating. Really, it's, okay. This is a point that I've come back to many, many times. And this is the reason I have struggled my entire life with this connection with my mother, is all these cancer placements, that's all about home and family. Family is important. Home is important. Then I end up with, my mother the way she is, with the narcissism thing, where, she's all about playing the victim one moment, and if you don't give her the reaction she's looking for that way, then she's going to spin on the dime, and then you get to see the beast come out, and she has to say and do the mean things, right? And what I've realized is one of my biggest struggles on this end is because, okay, right now, I know in order to step into the life that I want to have and, invite in the connections that I do want to have in my life, I cannot be getting pulled back into the bullshit with my family, right? So it's I set the intention a while back where if I have to completely disconnect from my family in order to get to the friendships and relationships with other people in existence that I want to have, I'm ready to, write off the family and just be done with them. And it's that seemed like it was the universe was yes, that's what you need to do, and I watched this spiritual universe video last night, and it was talking about final tests before union, but it's the everything that I'm finding recently, because even tarot readings that I've been drawn to, it's they always come back to, there's something there that you have to walk away from before this next thing. And so, the one video was talking about this test, and it's I am right there right now. And it is irritating as shit. So a couple days ago, I was journaling about being ready to get to the next space where I can have the connections with people that are supportive and not just toxic like my family has been, right? I am ready. I am ready to be done in this space, and I'm ready to move on to the connections I'm meant to have, that I've always essentially been blocked from because I keep getting pulled into the family drama. and like letting them actually suck the life out of me, so they don't have to realize how truly horribly miserable they are and have always been. Yeah. Anyway, so I write this thing in the journal. And then yesterday, like I woke up in a good mood, and like all these things everything seems very supportive of the idea that I am ready for this shift, right? And like all these cards that I've pulled recently even seem to be speaking to the same basic things. It's time, it's ready, or I'm ready, let's do this thing, right? But then, of course, the focus on, like that one, I think it was a Venus return tarot reading I watched the other day, where she said at the exact moment that I was writing about the frustration I was having in packing, because it's like I don't have any sort of idea of when I'm going to be moving out or where I'm going to go or anything. So it's really frustrating to try to pack things up and try to keep out things that I know I want or want access to or will want access to in a, timely fashion if something does come up. It's just really frustrating that I don't have any set plans, so I don't know how to pack completely, right? So obviously, I'm not packing my clothes up like I would if I had a plan, or a specific plan, but then I was watching, as I was writing this, about the frustration with not knowing how to pack. I'm watching this tarot reading, and she says, you don't need logic, you don't need a plan, you just need to have a sense and follow that. It's like, yes, that's where I'm at. I keep coming back to these things. and it's constantly the same stuff. The shit with the family. And it's like, I know, I've talked many times about how I feel like when things start to come together, they're going to go fast. But still, it's like, we're still like building up to it, right? So like my brother's family having their move situation work out. They have a house they want next to her brother in Oklahoma, but they had to wait on their house to sell. And they had somebody that wanted their house, but then they also had to wait on their house to sell, right? And I think there was like another person in the way of that process too. So it appears as though the ones that were the holdup for my brother's family, that they have that it's been pushed through a little further now, and now they're ready to look at closing on July 17th, I think. So therefore we had to have the appraiser or whoever come out today to do the walkthrough and check everything out, which is really irritating when they're on vacation. But yeah, is what it is. But even then, like their hold up is like, I can see specific things with why it needed to be held up. Like for me on the financial end, the respite care with Gracie and the dog watching thing. Like right now, I don't even know where I'm at time-wise with these guys, but I know that I was at least locked in for 2 weeks. It's like, this is a lot of time to be watching somebody else's dogs when I have to go to their house just for a few hours at a time and still have my own dogs at home, and all that fun stuff. So, but my main source of income has been these two things, right? So it's been helpful for me that they got hung up for a little while longer. But yeah, there's just a lot of layers to it. It goes back to that everything being connected thing, right? So it's like my brother's situation's been hung up, but I also kind of needed it to be hung up because it's a little easier financially for me while I'm working on figuring things out, and following the sense since I don't have any kind of plan. Um, anyway, going back to that mom point, because moving stuff is exactly where that's okay. Okay. The appraiser was here, right? So they went through and checked everything to make sure everything worked. And I'm sitting here talking, and the dogs are asleep, and all at once I hear water running. And this shower around the corner just started like, it's like water was still up there, and it just let it go. So it's like, okay. Anyway, scared the crap out of me and the dogs for a minute. We're good now. Anyway, yesterday I went to help my mom with something. We went over to my aunt's house to drop off this bed that my mom got from the friend whose sister died, her auction. It's like a kid's bed. And there's apparently 2 beds that she has a bunch of the pieces for, but not all of them together. So my mom makes a comment to my uncle when we're dropping this stuff off about maybe between the 2 of them, you'll have enough pieces to make 1 bed. It's like, okay, that sounds exciting. Anyway, so yeah, we're over there, and then she wanted to go get ice cream. And it was a big deal that we were going, and she wasn't telling my dad anything because he ate a freaking half gallon of ice cream yesterday. Like, that's all he chose to eat. So, and he was just eating it out of the carton about every time I turned around, until my mom made him eat something else later. Now, mind you, he's diabetic, right? So that's the ongoing thing. And with the prednisone that he's on because of the brain surgery thing that he had to have, I don't know how long he's supposed to be on that, but he's actually on insulin too. And he's eating like that. So it's what it is, whatever. I made some comment about he's probably trying to line himself up to have have a diabetic coma or something, because he doesn't give a shit. He's just, and you can say, well, he's had these strokes, but it's like, he didn't give a shit before. Why would he give a shit after? So, yeah. Anyway, I digress. I had said something. It's like, it seemed like when I tried to get in the back of the truck the other day, like the tailgate was locked. And it was after my dad had driven over. Yeah, my dad drove. And no, he hasn't been clear. It was just next door to my grandma's house. But still, the nice thing is there's at least a whole bunch of construction on that road. So there's not a lot of traffic right now, which is probably the only reason it was okay. But it really wasn't okay even. But anyway, like when I tried to get into the tailgate later, it's like, is it locked? He doesn't normally lock it. But then I didn't know if he put his tools back in there, and he was just mad at me and my mom mainly my mom for going and getting so much more shit, because I talked about this auction that she kept buying things from, and bringing it home. So then the path in the garage, because we can't pull a car in there or anything because there's so much shit in there. And then it went from just having a bunch of shit where you could park the car, then they had to get everything out of the camper so they could try to sell it. And the issue there was there was a lot of this stuff that the people they bought the camper off of gave them. So it was like, do we really need to keep all of these things when they were given to you to begin with? And my mom's all like, oh, well, I might be able to get some money out of them. It's like, only if you actually get pictures of them and post them on Facebook or wherever you want to try to sell them at. It's like, otherwise we're just collecting shit. So all the shit from the camper that, a lot of it came from these people because they bought the camper, is now in the garage, just taking up space. And as we just had this little path to go through in there, Then she goes to her friend's sister's auction and comes back with all sorts of stupid shit we don't need. There are 2 little Christmas trees. Last year, the only reason the Christmas tree got put up was because I saw it and was thinking she wanted to see what it looked like. But she was living at the camp or at the hospital most of the time, so she didn't even see it that much. I got it put up, which was a pain in the ass in and of itself, but then I didn't fluff it, pull the branches apart and all that stuff so we could actually see what it looked like. It was pre-lit, so it was basically a big nightlight. And I think my dad fluffed some of it and my mom fluffed a tiny bit of it. But then when it was time to put it up, it was like, I kind of wish you hadn't, because now it's a whole ordeal to try to make it fit again, right? But that was the only reason the tree got put up. I've been the only reason any trees have gotten put up the entire time I've been back, honestly. My mom will talk about it, but she won't do it. That's my dad's job or my job. So then I like the lights, so I'm inclined to do it on that end. But then it doesn't get decorated beyond that, and may or may not get fluffed for that matter. But yeah, that tree got put in the living room, which normally we don't have a Christmas tree in there. Normally there are 2 in the family room because that's where we have more space for it. And there's 2 windows on either side of the fireplace. And it looks kind of nice in there when you're, having dinner, whatever. Last year, 1 got put up. And, even it was the one in the living room because she wanted to see what it was like, and then 1 in the family room that we normally would have had. But then beyond that, it's like nobody really cares. Christmas sucked last year, period. It's kind of, for me, it's kind of sucked a lot longer than that. Because I've always had the issue with okay, yes, I've gotten some things that I have liked in my lifetime, but generally here, more recently especially, it's not about if you're going to like something or not. Now it's my mom proving, okay, she's going to get you something that she thinks you might like. If you like it, pat on the back, and it's because I know you so well, that kind of bullshit. If you don't like it, she gets her feelings hurt, especially if it has to go back, and I think everything she got my brother's family had to go back, which was, she got them the same thing she got me, essentially. It's like these sweatsuits she got for everybody that are supposed to be basically the equivalent of a weighted blanket. If you have any kind of neurodivergence or whatever, it's supposed to be a helpful thing on that end. And then there was the vibration plate. A blanket of some sort. I've talked about the one I got on here. I like mine. It's black and it's got all these colors. It's got skulls and hearts and stuff, and it's soft. I like it. She got her feelings hurt because they allowed the one she got them to go in a dog crate for a while. They have a stack of blankets on their couch, and if India gets a couple in her box and the Basset gets a couple in her box, right? Then as they come out and get cleaned, then they might end up on the couch instead. So it's like they kind of on rotation kind of a thing. But she got her feelings hurt because this big expensive blanket that she didn't ask them if they needed another blanket. And, if you look at their stack of them, they probably would have said no because there's at least 8. And I can say that confidently because I had to fix the stack today before I left after I had the dogs in the car because they had, well, actually, it was before I brought them back in. They were still outside. They got the zoomies last night and were like tearing shit up. So, like, all the cushions on the couch were knocked over. The blankets they were still mainly folded, but they were kind of all over the place. It's like, so I was trying to tidy it up a little bit. But yeah, she got her feelings hurt because they allowed the blanket to be in the dog crate at one point in time. And, then of course that got her showing me as like, this is a $90 blanket or whatever. It's like, why the fuck would you spend that much on a blanket? Like, even though the one that I have, I like it, it stays on my desk chair. And if I happen to get cold, then, I got it right there. I have at least 3, because I have one blanket that my aunt got me that is covering the TV. Because I had this, like, I want to say 2020, 2021-ish. I was asleep. It was in that kind of space of in the process of waking up. And I heard a guy clear as day say, "Hey." And it was like, clearly enough that I opened my eyes and was like, what the fuck was that? I know nobody's in here with me. But then I got paranoid and was thinking, maybe did that come from the TV somehow, or am I just hearing things? So just, I ended up covering the TV and it's still covered. I think it's been uncovered like once or twice. But I don't really watch TV in that room. So, but yeah, it's just a weird experience. And honestly, I have since kind of connected it as, I think honestly, it seemed like Twin Flame's voice, but it was before I was aware of the connection fully. Like, I knew this Twin Flame concept was something relevant for me, but I didn't really know much about what it was. It's like I kind of looked into it for a little bit, and then I kind of walked away from it for a little bit. Until, I turned my love and career lives over to the universe to lead, and then suddenly weird shit's happening otherwise. So because all this other weird shit's happened, it makes sense for me to think that when I was hearing that in his voice, that it actually could have been like some sort of like telepathic kind of connection. And yes, I do believe in that as well. But I think that you're only really open to it as you, kind of raise your frequency. So like I've talked about when I was in, I think it was actually 12 when I invited in the devil or demons or whatever you want to say. Like, demons, yes. I don't believe in the devil. That's, entirely Christian made up thing at this point. But like the demon aspect, what I think that is the telepathic connection, but the negative skew on it. So, like the fear thoughts that tend to be more prevalent in the lower frequency space. Like you have those random stray thoughts that you don't seem to be able to control as you are in the lower frequency space. If you like spend all your time being afraid of everything or sad or angry about everything, then you're going to be more aligned with the lower frequency heavy stuff, right? So as you kind of raise your frequency, the lower stuff can't access you, but then you get more connected to the higher frequency stuff, right? So also, like, I'm thinking the the clairs, clairaudience, clairvoyance, all these things. It's like that's more specifically the clairaudience. It's like the things that you hear. I hear things, and I never thought it was like some sort of gift per se. It's like I've always like caught messages in like song lyrics and stuff. That's why I listen to music so much and obsessively 4 times, right? So, I've talked about, so my cousin with the bullying bullshit, that all started when I was 8, right? And it was only about a year ago that I made the connection. I always love the song. It's Mr. Big, To Be With You. And there's a line in the song that says, "Wake up, who cares about little boys that talk too much?" And that always got my attention. That was like my favorite line in the song. And it was like, it did not occur to me until way later that it's like, this is how clairaudience can work, right? The stuff that you pick up like that. Like, it is that easy. But like even then, that song came out that same year. Because that would have been 1991. I was born in 1983. So when I was 8, 91, and then that's the same year the song came out. I discovered that last year. It's like, oh, like it's right on time for me. So it's like when musicians tap into the flow state or artists tap into the flow state, it's because there is something there that is needed in the world, right? So flow state is like the divine access point, right? So when you get into the flow and make music from that space, you're communicating some kind of message that like that little 8-year-old kid, me, needed at that time, right? So they put it out there, and I love the shit out of that song. I mean, I still let that be something that kind of burdened me for an extremely long time, which was the reason that I invited the darkness in when I was like 12, because I figured it was, when I was 8, I got kind of fixated on, well, if God hates me, then I hate God. And my life was demonstrating that he seemed to hate me, so God is everything. So yeah, it's like, whatever you are open to receiving, that's where, those things are going to be communicated from. And I very strongly believe that, because when I first started, after I committed love and career to the universe to lead, right? That was sometime in late summer, early fall of 2023. And one of the first things that happened, of course, I've talked about the zoo day, the derby stuff, all this stuff. One of the, and I've talked about this on here before too, one of the early things is like, I got locked in on his music, and it's like I felt it all the way through my entire being, right? Like this one particular song. And then it was kind of this sense of resonance at somebody out there gets it. What, like all the shit that I'm carrying, somebody out there at some level gets it. And so I listened to his music like obsessively. Then I was watching these, one day I was like, this can't be normal or healthy. This feels obsessive, right? So like, this is the thought I'm actually having, because I'd spend like hours to start my day listening to the same song over and over again, just because I felt it and I felt a connection to it. As I was thinking that it was obsessive and can't possibly be healthy, I happen across this white feather tarot reading. And one of the first things she says for the pile that I picked was, you feel like this is obsessive, but your guides are saying it's not, and it has to be this way right now. It's like a direct response to this thought that I had just had. I was like, clearly that's for me because that's like right on point, right? And then the next one was this White Rose Guidance, I think, was the creator. I don't think she makes videos currently. But I watched, the pile that I picked for what she was doing. She gets, it's like messages from your person kind of a reading. And she pulls this card that says specifically, listen to my music. It was like, that's like two things right there that's directly associated with this random thought I had of this feels obsessive and like I shouldn't be doing it. And it's like, okay, well, that is how it kind of works, right? So I message received. Obviously, it answered the thought that I had, so it was clearly for me. And it's like, I got to take that because that's 2 in a row, and God, there have been a bunch of things like that too. I talked about there's another White Feather Tarot reading shortly after I was, kind of leaning more into the twin flame thing, and that he is who I was getting this information about, and it was somehow legit, and I didn't really understand it, but I had to go with it because of things like that. And then I watched this White Feather Tarot reading one day, and it's before I went to the concert. And she said, something's coming up, and there's something with pictures that's going to be important. It's like, okay, well, that's, how do you prepare anything for that, right? What ended up happening was I went to this concert by myself. And it's like a double headliner thing, and since I went by myself, you're open to socialize with people, right? Which I wasn't big on socializing because I've kind of been in hermit mode for a while. Like I said, this works out because I'm talking to my phone and there is nobody else except for these dogs around me, right? But at some point, other people can see them. But still, for me in my space, I'm still relatively in the bubble and it's relatively safe there. I ended up talking to somebody who was there for the first band, the third band, but the other headliner band that was playing that night. And she was there with, I think, her boyfriend and I don't know if his brother or another friend. But at one point she started talking to me, and then at one point, there were 4 groups that played all together. And of course, they were like, when they were playing the music in between, like for one band to tear down, the other band to set up. Of course, everybody's bonding over the music and whatnot, right? So at one point, I thought she was taking a picture, but then she ended up having the video camera on, which was like a whole weird thing anyway, because it was like before I started doing this, so I wasn't really feeling very comfortable. I hated video cameras. I'm still not a huge fan of them, but since I know this was something that I was supposed to do, my guidance and nudgings kept pushing me in this direction. I had to suck it up, right? So video cameras freaked me out less. But that was something that happened before I started doing this, right? So concert was before the YouTube thing came up. And the YouTube thing came up as a response because he had to be in a spotlight for me to find him, but then how was he ever going to find me if I wasn't doing more than I'd ever done, right? So then it was like, okay, now I have to do this thing. There's a spot on the wall. Anyway, right, so that was why I started it. The other thing that happened was for the concert, or for the band that I was there to, primarily to see, there was like this group of people, 3 or 4 couples. I feel like the group was bigger when I saw them together to start the evening, but then as like things shifted around or like people moved to different areas or whatever, it's like I didn't know who was actually part of that group or not, but it was couples, right? And at one point they decided to take a group picture. And I was right there in the middle of the fucking group picture. It's like, oh fuck, I have nowhere to go. So the first one was just like really awkward, and it's like, oh crap. And then the second one, it was like, I was like, well fuck it, I might as well embrace this, because it's like I can't really go anywhere at this point. And just because of the way the crowd had moved, it's like every time I could get a little closer, I would. But then it was just like this whole weird thing. But then I end up in the middle of this group that's taking a picture, and it's like, oh fuck. And yeah, so like the first time was awkward, and then the second one I just grinned. It's like I can't do anything about it, so I might as well just accept it and go. And it's like the guy that took the picture, like I could tell afterwards, he was trying to see if there was any way he could crop me out of it. And I'm pretty sure just like the way the group was, that it wouldn't be really easy. But she said something about a picture, so I fully expect that one of these days that picture is going to find its way back to me. I didn't talk to them at all at that point, and I probably, I probably should have said something. Now I probably would. Yeah, I've talked to people that I accidentally photobombed before. The other time that it happened was a Pacers game, and it was like, I think a mom and her daughter were sitting in front of me, and I bent down to pick my drink up right at the time they were taking this picture. I was like, oh, I am so sorry if I messed your picture up. So then they ended up taking another picture, but including me in it, because the first one had been kind of crappy, but since I was right there and had photobombed it anyway, then it's like, okay. So there are random pictures floating around of me actually, or accidentally being in other people's pictures. But that, since it was after the tarot reading that I'd watched, was like, I feel like this is going to be relevant one day. If only to support, or as supporting evidence of the stories that I've been telling regarding that thing, right? Which I think is largely a big part of why I am the way I am on retelling stories, and not expecting that anybody that finds their way to this video is going to want to like watch all of the videos I've ever put out to get other information. So I try to give enough of the backstory where you know what's going on and don't have to go digging through things unless you just so choose to, right? Because I'm sure, yeah, because that's always been something that like I've been big on, like, okay, there's these things. Like in high school, I also remember wanting to prove the existence of like a higher power, right? And that you can know. You just kind of like follow the breadcrumbs enough, and then eventually enough of them, you can kind of piece it together. And like a lot of the stuff I talk on here about, I know I sound crazy. That's okay. And that's part of me and my purpose with that anyway, is because I have to be used to the fact where a lot of what I talk about people don't necessarily get, because that's what I'm here to do, is kind of connect the dots, right? So I've talked many times about how ultimately my entire life I've spent collecting data, and then like storytelling is kind of connecting the dots for me. So like, I don't know where any video is going to go, like from the start to the end. Like I have no idea. I might have a general idea of something that I want to talk about, or I might just start talking and see where it goes. And it's like, by the time I get toward the end of it, it's like there always ends up being some kind of purpose for what I was talking about. I just didn't necessarily know it until I talked my way through and got there. And then it was, how the hell did I get there? Which goes back to that part where I do the video and I don't know what I'm talking about until I just do it. And then when I rewatch it, that's when I'm trying to figure out like what I actually talked about, to figure out how I'm going to name it, or if I need to tag anybody, if I misspoke and need to correct something. Like the other day I said something about the first elementary school. It was not the first elementary school. in our district. There was another one it's been around for a long time, but I rarely ended up over there, so I always forget that it exists until somebody's like specifically talking about it. But like that story was because the elementary that I started going to, it was the new elementary school when I started going there, obviously, but it was the second in the district. But I misspoke when I was telling the story because I, in that moment, forgot about the other one, right? So that kind of thing. It's like, but it's not about like this whole thing that I've been doing, this YouTube thing. It's not about being perfect. That's never been the point of it. It was just talking through to go wherever I was meant to go. And then, this is where, like, when I watch the videos back and, start making connections, it's like, oh, well, there's another another point that I started that story and then wandered off from it and forgot to get back to it. Or learn like a bigger piece of it that I hadn't made sense of before. That happens frequently. It's like, oh, this and this makes me think of this other thing. And now how do all these things go together? So it's like my whole YouTube process is a matter of connecting the dots and, trying to tell enough of the story so you don't have to go revisit all the other stuff. But at the same time, like the whole journey that I've been on, I've had the sense a lot, especially in the first year when I've talked about being ready to actively try to grow it, but really I think that's more, I'm just open about it if it does grow. So it's still not jumping through hoops or trying to do anything in particular to make it grow. But like, especially the first year, because I got up to 12 subscribers. And then after that, it kind of jumped. And then now I think, okay, last time I looked, it was like around 115. But it's like, I always knew that this was basically the foundation, laying the foundation. So, I started processing through the stories that seemed to keep going back around to like stuff with my family, and as I processed that out of my system and cried about it a whole shit ton on here, it's made space for me to make other connections, right? And to release the density that I've been carrying, right? So that, like, going back to that energetic cords thing, it's like all the density that, of course, this transmutation thing that I've always that I talk a lot about, how I just kind of absorb the density from the environment and then I have to kind of process through it and release it that way. It's about turning it into something else, right? So this has been a big piece of making that happen, right? But I'm telling the same stories over and over again, essentially, because it's all about laying the foundation, right? This is where I started from. And these were like the outer layers of things, the stuff that hurt the most starting out. But then as I've processed it out of my system, then I haven't had to carry it anymore. So that's allowed me to make space for better things to come in, right? And now I am realizing that I didn't ever finish that thing I was talking about with my mom, which was, she talked about, or I asked her, I got in after my dad drove the truck when he wasn't supposed to drive the truck, it seemed like the tailgate was locked because I tried to open it like 3 or 4 times and it wouldn't open. But then yesterday, after I mentioned it, then it opened like it normally did. It's like, it definitely was not doing that before. Because I definitely thought it was locked because it wasn't opening that easy. But then it opened that easy. So then it's like, okay, so now I'm questioning myself, right? But then I realized, she's got this, it's a rack of some sort that was probably a decorative rack with, it looks like fake bamboo. Feels like cheap plastic. So my mom, that was another one of those things. My mom got it because they were just getting rid of it, and did I want it? And it's like, no, not really. Not that one. And she said, okay, then we'll throw it away or list it for free or whatever. It's like, you could have just left it and it would have happened, right? Anyway, I started a conversation. So what happened was I asked about this rack. Oh, she's told me I could take a picture and post it on Facebook and sell it. It's like, oh, cool, you got me a project. Anyway, then she says, where'd that black rack go? The black rack that was in the garage that had some paint stuff, some pictures, and miscellaneous things. It had 2 boxes of her and my dad's clothes on it, and the Christmas tree on top, right? So that was the best place to put the really ridiculously big Christmas tree box. It's a 2-person lift, but I've moved that every time by myself, and it is difficult, but I can do it. And my head had to be involved when it was coming to put it up on the rack, or especially on top of the clothes on the rack. But she asked where it went, and I said, it was mine. And she said, I know, where'd it go? I said, to the storage unit. And then she just looked at me like I couldn't possibly be putting anything over there. And I don't even remember, she asked if I was using it over there. It's like, yeah. Because I don't think, because there again, my start point for moving stuff to the storage unit is the stuff that I don't use that much, right? That's obviously the natural starting point. Let's get it out of the space. The stuff that was in the closet, the stuff that was in the shed, the stuff that was in the garage. Well, I mean, I haven't. My picture frames went over there, because I got a couple sets, like boxes of picture frames that I was going to paint and try to sell. And I still have some of those, so they went over there. My spray paint, I think it's too hot to move that over there, but I need to organize it better in the garage space. But anyway, because her 2 boxes of clothes came off the rack, I put them on the box that has the dog food for their morning stuff. And then I opened the door, and she said, what was it? She asked if I was getting rid of, she said, don't get rid of any of the good storage totes. And I said, what are you talking about? She goes, those clear ones. And I opened the door. I was like, that one? She's like, yeah. I said, that's yours. I'm not getting rid of that one. It's like, you need to go through it because I just moved it off this rack, because we had this conversation the day before, and I told her that I was moving this stuff, and I brought, she said she needed to go through it, so I took them, or I pushed them into the house, so she could go through it. And she said there's a lot of stuff that is too big and needs to go, but she thought she could get some money out of it. It's like, that only works if you take pictures and post it and try to, make forward progress, but then yesterday it came up with, she was suddenly aware that rack was gone because her stuff was no longer on the rack, which is exactly why I moved it out of there, because that's the big thing that the storage unit has been there for me for, is to disentangle from the chaos that is the family chaos, right? I've talked about every time I can do so much cleaning, and then I get to a point where it's like I just get completely wiped out and I have to take a break from it. And as I step back and take a break for a little while, I've noticed that their stuff just starts creeping in. It's like, this is why I haven't been able to do stuff, because it's like when I have my stuff, it's kind of like a kind of barricade around me to keep them from my energy all the time. But then their shit starts creeping in because I've cleared a bunch of my shit out. So it's like this. I got the storage unit to try to disentangle, right? Because I'm ready to leave the family situation and to get into a better situation with people that I know are meant to be in my life, which is not my family anymore. And, it's kind of funny. Yesterday, I came across this video on Instagram. It was Travis Warrior Unicorn. Love his page. He's got his little uplifting short messages. And the one he had yesterday was talking about when he said certain, relationships, some of them will naturally come to a conclusion, and it's okay for that to happen. It's like nobody's better or worse for letting it go. It's just, if it's time, right? And it's like, I was feeling that very much with the family situation. Then, I come across this message, and it was like, he's like talking about the importance of allowing yourself to grieve if you need to, and also be aware that it's okay for things to come to a natural conclusion and that it is okay to let them go, right? And then going back to that point where it's talking about like all these messages, seem to be showing me that I'm ready to get ready I'm ready to have this other stuff come in, but this other, like the family stuff, has to go first. Yeah. Oh, the part with my mom, the fact that she's my mom, the fact that we've had kind of a pretty toxic connection. She's still my mom. And with all my freaking cancer placements, I have a hard time letting it be okay to walk away from family, because family is so important. But it's like, there's nothing else for this situation for anybody's benefit, I don't think. When I was taking these guys to Hardee's this morning, I was thinking about, like the narcissism pages, of course. Okay, people getting, okay. Just hit that and I think it shifted back the other way. Okay, anyway. I was thinking about people getting hung up in like the victim mentality. And I think it was like something I saw where some girl was telling off a bunch of people for listening to music of somebody who had supposedly been gotten in some kind of trouble for having an abusive relationship. But then, like, from what I remember of that time frame, I don't think it was proven. But I think there was a whole thing where a bunch of people locked in on, this guy being this horrible person and, only ever capable of being bad because he may or may not have had this abusive relationship. And like, she was trying to claim that everybody that ever listened to this guy's music, or this other guy that was actually doing a reaction video to what he was watching of her spouting off because he had done a collaboration with this guy. She's just going on and on about anybody that listens to their music is okay with these things because, they've made it clear that they, are this way or whatever. It's like, pretty sure I remember that there was the allegation. I don't know whether it was proven or not. But what I was really thinking with watching this whole situation, of course, there are the people that want to attack everybody for victim blaming. And there are the people that want to be forever victims, right? I've talked a lot about like the toxic connection I had with my ex, right? A whole lot about that. And I had to process through a whole lot of stuff with that. And the biggest thing that I can tell you from that was it was a very toxic relationship, but it was toxic on both ends because there was something about me that got me into that situation. And there was something about him that allowed him to treat me the way he treated me in that situation. And the thing with me was I had come to believe all these really bad things about myself and that I was just like this horrible person and had no value because of like the conditioning from my life, like my being the scapegoat in my family with my narcissistic grandfather and mother, and seeing, especially like my grandma was like the biggest enabler for my grandfather, and then my dad was the biggest enabler for my mom, but they existed in that toxicity too. Were they also getting treated kind of shitty and expected to be miserable and just live that way? Yeah, yes. And they still made decisions that put them there, and it was still a result of their own trauma that allowed them to be okay with seeing and participating in the shitty behavior, right? So like the biggest thing with my ex, the things that had to happen for me to get into that relationship were things that continued chipping away at the little bit of value that I saw in myself. So, okay, I had the relationship with the guy that was the 4-year relationship that, I thought I was going to marry him. And really, I was thinking about that the other day too. It's like that connection was okay enough that we could have probably gotten married and it been okay. But that wasn't what I wanted for my life. I didn't want just okay. I remember thinking in high school that I wanted the kind of connection that makes other people want it for themselves. Not because they're jealous, but because it makes them, or it gives them hope that there's something better out there, and that maybe somebody might love them the way that I would, the way that an ideal connection would be for me, right? It's like I want a connection that's so good that other people would want that for themselves, see it as a possibility. But of course you don't get that kind of connection without doing a whole lot of work, right? And part of that was this okay connection that he was, at least for a time, he was my best friend. So, but there were little things that I did that demonstrated that I didn't value myself enough. Like when we were having this serious conversation and, I was able to open up about the suicide attempt, but leave out other details about it that I felt I was supposed to open up to him about it. It's like when I chose to leave out the information, it basically inserted a disconnect in that relationship where it felt like I was always trying to be somebody slightly different. It's like I was trying to be okay enough, but then there were still these things that I wasn't okay with talking to him about, and it ended up with me holding back. And then, as that goes on, that little rift becomes, a much bigger chasm or whatever, and it got to a point where it's like it just wasn't something that could be maintained anymore. Right. So then it was just a natural thing that it had to come to an end because I wasn't able to be fully myself and open with him because this one thing that I chose to hold out on. Right. So it's like before that, it would have been great. But since I refrained just enough, it ended up where things got really hard. Then it was like I didn't trust myself enough. And then I didn't believe that he could actually love all of me when I had been holding back, right? So, then when that came to its natural conclusion, I was hung up on that one for a while, but I also needed that because, when I ended up in a really legitimately toxic connection, having that relationship to look back on in the time where I was getting treated like shit, and like with my ex-husband, we were married less than 3 months, and I didn't want any part of like changing my shirt around him, because he would like do or say the mean things, right? It's just always there. And I accepted those things. I had a series of things that did not go well for me, and I thought that I just deserved all this shitty stuff. And when I lost sight of who I was because of my military training and learning that I was more capable than I thought I had been, but then I returned to the life where I had to make sense of what I learned to be true of myself, but in this other space where it hadn't been true for me. It's like trying to balance it out, I went back to the old ways, right? So there again, going back to that, the idea of needing to walk away from the family because there was a series of things that chipped away at what I had believed to be true for me. And then when I lived the things that seemed to contradict what I thought to be true for me, then I lost sight of having any kind of value myself, right? And it was through processing through how I got there that I really was, or that was really brought to my attention that it was my own toxicity that got me into that toxic relationship, right? It wasn't exclusively him, and that was something I was thinking about today, was like, there are so many people that want to get after everybody for victim blaming or whatever, or, trying even to give anybody that's been through the shitty stuff, give them any kind of hope that they don't have to just be the victim. There's like a whole bunch of people that want people to be forever victims, right? And which is a big part of what I think is the issue I have with the part of the political bullshit that's currently in place. It's set up to where we have bullies and victims, and they're both seeing that for the other side as the bully and I'm the victim, but then they don't want to see any time where they might have been a bully to somebody else, which is again a big part of where that religious bullshit comes in. And they want people trapped in this this sort of victim mentality where they just have to be ruled over and are forever stuck in the role of being the victim, right? Because if you're stuck in the role of being the victim, you're not going to make the moves to empower yourself. You're just going to accept the victim thing, right? And like when I talked about when I first moved back home when I was going through my divorce, and I got on like the narcissistic support groups on Facebook, and it's like everybody just wanted to like coddle you for when you're down, and not like, it's supposed to be a safe space to kind of vent through things and everything. But it's like, if you show any kind of, I don't want to just be the victim, then people are going to turn on you and suddenly try to paint you into the picture of you're the narcissist, right? So it's like, but that's like with everything. It's like we all, I say that many times, nobody is ever exclusively the hero, the villain, the victim, or the saint. We all go through those roles and play those parts in other people's lives. So, I can think of some people that I wasn't very nice to, and that I could potentially say that I bullied in some kind of way. I can say that on my end, a lot of times it felt reactionary, but that doesn't mean it was any less effective, or they were any less affected by it. And I think the ones that bother me the most were like the little kids that, like when I was younger, I saw them as like this pure little kid. Maybe, okay, how do I explain this? Basically, just being a kid, right? But yet, the thing that they were doing that got me to kind of lash out at them was demonstrating something that I was bullied or punished for in my own life. And so it's like it wasn't safe for me to be this way in the world, so why should it be safe for them to be this way in the world, right? So it was like the stuff that I went after, if you will, was the weakness that I also had, which wasn't actually weakness. Like, okay, the one little kid at the daycare, she was this little feisty thing, and she had this streak where she was just like pinching everybody. And my only way of knowing to deal with it was shame, right? So just, no, that's really bad. And, like pouring all the heavy stuff on. So then I just watched this little kid just crumble. It's like, oh, and that shattered me. Because then I saw her, it's like she would try to, it's like she was trying to get my approval. But then when she thought I wasn't looking, go back to doing the same stuff with like the pinching and like the being little feisty twerp. And it's like, it's like that thing. It's like, okay, so my family dumped all this shame and blame and guilt and stuff on me to keep me in line, to keep their illusion alive. It didn't fix the problem. Right? It did, if there was a problem, that little feisty, that's feisty. That was like one of the things when I really started paying attention to the angel numbers. I was driving home from one of the first inner path classes that I went to, and I was thinking about my great grandmother and just being frustrated over she was one of my favorite people. She, could laugh and joke and all this stuff, but she still said the things that didn't help, right? So, when I was dating the guy that I thought I was going to marry, and she said, you need to snatch one up before all the good ones are taken. It just reinforced that idea of, you're going to get older and you're not good enough as you get older, right? So you have to find one while you're marryable, right? So it's like just all these different layers of the message that I received. And it's like, that wasn't helpful, and like feeling like I was a burden to my family. That was part of what got me into the marriage that I shouldn't have ever been in, or needing my dad or my brother to say, this is not the one for you. Even though everything in me knew that wasn't the one for me, right? Because I felt so like weighed down by these things I'd been conditioned to believe, like the idea that you're no longer worthwhile if you're older, and the whole spinster idea and all this bullshit. It's like that was all a part of what got me into that toxic connection, right? Or needing somebody outside of yourself to save you. But then also, so I found this option that I knew was really shitty, but then needed my dad or my brother to tell me it was okay to realize it was shitty and not want it. Whereas before, realizing it was shitty enough should have been enough to not get into that connection. But because, I was conditioned to think that, you have to be nice to people. Otherwise, all the shit they say about women to keep women locked into toxic connections, right? Because like with my ex, my stomach's making noises. With my ex, it's like, I knew when he sent me a message on the dating app, that was the free dating app because you get what you paid for. And that was very much the case. When he sent me a message, I remember thinking, I didn't take him seriously. There was nothing about that one I took seriously. And yet, because I thought I had to be nice, I talked to him anyway. Wasted my time and his, wasted a whole lot of time on it on that end, and had to deal with a whole bunch of other icky stuff. Like, okay, once we did start talking, and he pushed to meet up for breakfast one morning after I got off work because I was working night shift. He was like real big on wanting to go out. And then when we went out, he was talking about all his drama in his life. And I remember thinking as I sat there, this dude talks a lot. And that was the connection. But yet, because there was nothing specific other than just thoughts of this isn't good, this is, like that stuff. It was just stuff that I'd been taught to brush off, because I shouldn't be worthy of trusting myself, basically. Which goes back to that religion and all the ways it tries to tear women apart to keep them trapped in toxic situations. That's how that happens. We get conditioned, then we go along with it, and then we don't know how we got there, and then all sorts of shitty stuff goes from there, right? So I end up going out with this guy, and we talk about his baby mama drama and all this stuff. And I just got out of my military training, so I know that I'm more capable than I thought I was before, but I'm trying to make sense of who I am in this new existence. And all I knew was I know I like to help people. And he clearly has something that I can help with, I guess. Which, toxic thinking, that is not a reason to get in a relationship. And yet somehow one thing led to another, and then we ended up getting married. Yeah. And it's literally that stupid. But it's like those little things, that like the things you do that give away or give access to you to people that should never have had access to you. Like the dude from my senior year in undergrad, when I lived in, it was the housing ministry, the American Baptist Association had this house that had been donated to them to use as a housing ministry for students on campus. Ended up there my senior year, and it was great. The malfunction was when I was getting the tour of the house, the house pastor's son was there, and there again, didn't take him seriously, and he clearly liked what he saw and was like all kinds of flirty at that point, and it was just kind of like, yeah, whatever, dude. But then once I ended up in that in that house, and we start talking, we become friends, and he never should have had access to my energy. But there again, because he got access to my energy, even though I knew that I didn't really take him seriously, I didn't have boundaries was the biggest thing. Then we have this really short little connection, go out a few times, and he came over to see me one day, and I had been talking to a friend on Instant Messenger, and it was a roommate from the year before, and I just said something about, Matt's coming over or whatever. And she was just, she was like my best friend from the year before. She was like, ooh, Matt, who's that? Is that your boyfriend? All I had to do was say what she had said, and he freaked out because he thought I was telling everybody that was my boyfriend, or that he was my boyfriend. It's like, no. It's like I literally just said, Matt's coming over. And I think I might have said we've gone out a couple of times or whatever. But all I had to do was tell him what she said, and he freaked. And I knew that was the case, and I knew that was one of my ways of pushing back, because, he's wanting to be around me too much, and not knowing how, because I was taught that I had to be polite, right? That I had to be nice to everybody. And then, how do I make this joker go away, kind of a thing. And I was like, hey, that'd work. So I just told him what she said. And then, then he freaked out. And then he told everybody that he associated with at all that I was crazy. And was like real big on that with the girl that was my best friend for 15 years. Her fiance was like this dude's, like, one of his best friends, and he bought right into it. Everything this asshole told him, and he just went right along with it. Well, then when I became friends with his fiance and then eventual wife, I can't tell you how many times he apologized because he listened to what that guy had said. It's like, I knew it wasn't going to go well. I didn't think it was going to go quite that bad, or like that arrows focused at me kind of a thing. I figured he'd just freak out and leave. Rather than, instead, he, like, everybody he talked to, which, okay. When I lived there in the fall, when I was there were 11 of us, I think. And then a few moved out in the spring. But the fall was kind of when it was the bigger thing, because his dad was the pastor, so he was always there, right? Until I got him pushed back a little bit. But then he had to tell everybody why I wasn't there anymore. And then he had to go find something else to do, which was hang with other friends. And, because he had gotten access to my energy, there were other people that were able to say or do shitty things that affected me, right? So one of his friends, I've talked about this, a bunch of my housemates and I went out one night to this bar right off campus, and we wanted to dance, right? No big deal. Except this dude's friend was there and somehow ended up with my phone number. And then he sends like really shitty, like rapey kind of comments to me. And it's like, when he first started sending me messages, like, it didn't, like, I was talking to a couple of the guys in the house, which they knew me. They also knew this guy. But I think they liked me better. Because they, of course, lived with me, so they spent a lot of time with me. And we had a really good relationship. But they had known this guy, too, and he had been a friend the year before. But they knew, I think, his less than savory friends as well, which I feel like Chris was kind of vaguely aware when I don't know if I let him read the messages that were sent to me, or just kind of was trying to bury it down and just say that some asshole was sending me messages and it was one of Matt's friends. But it's like I didn't really have a whole lot I could do with that beyond that. So there again, had Matt not had access to my energy, which he never should have had, this other asshole would never have been able to even know I existed enough to be interested in coming up with my number just so he could send me harassing messages. Right? So it's like literally that easy. What? We're all at once very attention seeking. Yeah. I'm not really sure how I got to that point. I remember I know one thing started with how I was ready to get into the new situation so I can actually have the connections that I am meant to have in my life, but it involves leaving the family connections first. And there again, then it makes me feel, then that video that I mentioned, the spiritual universe thing, they were talking about, the tests the universe sends your way, like the final tests before you can make it to union or whatever. And one of them was, you're going to be revisited by stuff like this, right? By the scenarios, to see if you act how you would have in the past, or to demonstrate if you have changed and are wanting to do things differently. So like with my mom, it's like last night I had this moment of thinking, it's like, it's really frustrating that she's my mom, and she's been one of the biggest pains in the ass for me, that it's about time for lunch, that has made me think the shitty things, believe the shitty things about myself. Going back to that worthiness wound thing, like, I just think of all the things that have come up this spring alone that have demonstrated that she's not going to change. She's always going to do the things she's always done, right? So there's no sense in me just staying there when I know she'll turn on a dime to kick me when I'm down if something goes wrong or whatever else, right? So, as example, January, when I found out I won the contest, she had me, like, within a half an hour, she and my dad had me in tears, and, like, the rest of the day was shot. And then she, like, after she found out Gracie was leaving, she gloated when she realized that meant she didn't have to renew the zoo membership. And that zoo membership's the only reason I was able to take those pictures that I ended up putting in this contest that ended up winning, right? So then she's done that like 2 or 3 times where she's kind of reminded me and just kind of like poked me that, like, we're not doing this anymore. So, it's like, obviously, if the kid's going away, why would you renew the zoo membership when she was the one that we were going there for? But still, because something worked out in my favor, she has to demonstrate that, we're not doing it no more. Now what are you going to do, right? Try to get away from the family in some other kind of way, right? Or like the deal with the idiot at the ice cream place in town that Taz was wound up and barking because he'd seen this guy walking his Yorkie behind the car. And the guy sticks his arm in the car, and Taz ends up nipping him. It's like, that was his fault, because who in their right mind sticks their hand closer to the dog that's already going off when there's nothing to achieve from that, right? You're not going to calm that dog down by, when you're the problem, and then showing the dog, I'm not the problem, by entering into the dog's space and letting him bite you. Do you have to potty? Is that the deal? Hold on. Okay, so it's like, it doesn't matter. It's like there's always going to be a dig. There's always going to be something to demonstrate that she's not supportive, right? So it's like, there is nothing for me in this space just because she's my mother. It's like, she's already demonstrated time and time and time again that she's always going to have the mean thing to say. She's always going to find a way to kick me when I'm down. So, to keep me from trying to move beyond the family, right? That's literally my whole life. I was not raised to have my own life. I was raised to feed into the toxic family system, raised to allow these other energies to suck the life from me so they could live longer while they're not providing anything useful for the world otherwise, right? Just negativity. No, I'm done. So it's frustrating because there again, the whole crabby thing in my nature wants me to be close to the family types, but it's like, I know this one's not going to change. it is as it's always been. I'm just now aware of what it's been that has taken me down this path that's not been useful, right? And that goes back to something I was thinking earlier when I was driving the dogs to Greenfield. I was thinking about like that idea of people wanting to be forever trapped in the like state of being victimized or whatever. It's like, okay, we all go through shit, and we cannot completely move on from it without processing through it and healing it when we're aware that it's there at any level. But a lot of people just want to, get set in the idea of being the forever victim, right? But the problem is nobody is ever exclusively the victim, right? Nobody's ever exclusively the hero, the villain, the victim, or the saint. And by trying to maintain that existence, it also keeps it where other people are also locked into the other side of it. Like, okay, if I were to stay in this connection with my mother, I know she's going to always, have the mean thing to say, to kick me while I'm down, or make it somehow my fault that things are going wrong for the family or whatever, because I'm not doing my part, because I'm not giving all of my energy to the family and trying to keep miserable people alive longer just to be miserable. It's like this point I was really thinking about this morning. It's like, if I maintain the connection, that also keeps her locked into that sort of narcissistic, dark, blah, icky thing, that space that she's been in as well, right? So I feel like I don't believe that nobody is unable to change. But I believe there are some dynamics that we cannot, or that enable people to not have to change, and that's where it becomes a problem. So like, if I were to continue sticking around with maintaining contact with my mother or whatever, and knowing that she's never going to change on that end, she's not going to change for me. She's always going to do those things for me, as far as, kicking me when I'm down, saying the mean thing, all that shit. But the only way those types will ever change is when people stop enabling the bad behavior. But that is not done through keeping other people locked in their victimhood, right? So it's a toxic connection altogether. And the only way to move on from it at any level is to go your separate ways. And sometimes that's what needs to happen. Like this situation with my family, I'm there, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. But as long as there's people around to keep enabling them, like my mom's best friend, she's not going to change. She's going to keep doing the same stuff for mom. She's going to still come around every once in a great while to check in with me to see if she can get me to sympathize for my mom in some kind of way and revert back to like whatever. I've talked about when the friend reached out to me because she was so sad for my mom because my brother was moving away with and taking her only grandchild. And I just said, she'll be fine. That was the end of the conversation. But I know that's, if I keep that connection open when I'm gone, she's still going to try to get the information for me so she can take that and talk to my mom about it. And, then they can have this conversation about how terrible I am, right? So it's like, it's as long as there are people feeding into the bad behavior, there's always going to be more of the bad behavior. So sometimes the only thing you can do is to disconnect and do your own healing shit, process through your own stuff, and know who you are and be able to move like beyond that. So like, I've been the scapegoat for this family for most of my life. And because those connections have existed in the way that they are, they're going to keep being that, right? And as long as it's okay for them to exist in that state, you can't change that, right? But the more we do our own work to heal our own shit and be able to move into an empowered state, the less it's acceptable for those connections to continue, right? So, my brother and I have talked a lot about how the only way we get to have lives is by moving away and choosing ourselves and our own families, right? And our own situation, right? To be of greater concern than the connection we were taught to pour everything into at the cost of ourselves. But they're still going to exist in their toxicity. They'll slowly fall away and all this stuff. But it's like, as long as anybody is willing to feed into the toxicity and enable it, that's what allows it to continue being the toxic thing that it becomes, right? So it's like, the only thing you can do is starve it, right? So like when I realized what my ex was doing, the one I married, and when I really started stepping back and realizing that he was literally just trying to get a reaction from me, and I stopped giving him the reaction, it infuriated him even more, but it helped me get out of there. Right? So it's basically starving him of the reaction because he loved the reaction. That was exactly what he wanted from me. But then finding out that my family is the reason I got into that. So now this connection has to end too. It's just frustrating. Anyway, there again, doing more of a video than I anticipated. And I feel like my voice is all weird now. But I'm going to wrap this up. It is like 2:00 and I am ready to go home and take a nap. Even though I probably won't at this point. Might go to bed early, who knows. But I spent a whole lot of time with these dogs today. I need to figure out what's going on with the bank. I might run down there real quick. Because I don't know if I finished that story. I sent this lady that I talked to at the bank an email to ask her a question. I get a text message from the bank back saying that they can't reach me at the email on file, even though I sent her the question. So she should have just been able to reply, right? But apparently, no. So then I call to try to set up an appointment with her. I tell the girl what happened with, it's like I sent a message, but for some reason I got a text message back saying that they can't reach me at the email on file. So she goes to update the information. It's like, it's not a new email. It's the same email. So we went through that. And then she said, well, do you want me to go ahead and set you up an appointment with her? And I said, yes. But then she got distracted with the other thing and then said, I'm going to transfer you to some other department that was going to talk about that stuff specifically, whatever, like the email, text stuff. It's like, all I wanted was to set up an appointment and to talk to the lady. If you could have just sent me to her on the phone, maybe I don't even have to go in. But now I probably just have to go in because it's probably just easier than whatever else. So I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, I'll wrap this up and go do something else. It remains to be seen what that is. So as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time, see ya.